Donald Trump, Norm Buster. I'm Scott Ott, and this episode of Bill Whittle Now is brought to you by the members at BillWhittle.com. Bill, that was the implied headline of a Politico story that I read that was describing the second day of the Republican National Convention. And while the story roamed further afield than farther afield, or one of those fields, than we are going to in this episode, I did want to focus on a couple of things that I thought were really interesting from a general perspective as part of a convention, but also just for Donald Trump himself. And let's start with this. There's a gentleman named Jon Ponder, a former bank robber, convicted felon, who President Trump pardoned as part of the Republican National Convention. We actually saw him, saw Mr. Ponder, saw President Trump, and an FBI agent who arrested him some 15 years ago. Mr. Ponder is now involved in he started a nonprofit organization to help inmates re-enter the workforce. And President Trump said of him, "Each person is made by God for a purpose." And he talked about having a country where people had an opportunity to make the best life possible for themselves. What do you think this telegraphs to perhaps people who aren't already in the Trump camp?
I don't want this to sound nasty, but one sentence like that makes up for all of the outrageous tweets or whatever other missteps the guy may make. I mean, to me, it's certainly there's a political theater aspect to this. There's no question about that. I'm not trying to say that there isn't, but Donald Trump's instincts for understanding the American people never ceased to amaze me and impress me, and I think it was I think it was beautifully spoken. I think it was beautifully done and a brilliant idea. And we may remember that when Rush Limbaugh was given the Medal of Freedom, he did it during the State of the Union address. And the reason that he did that, one of the reasons, is that when he is officially the president in an event like the State of the Union, then they can't edit him. Certainly, if there's a press conference, the press edit anything they want to and do all the time, every day. But in something like this, it gets out there, and it's not just him saying it, and it's not just him doing it. The thing about Donald Trump that he understands, that I just keep harping on forever, is that he not only understands the right thing to do, he understands that the right thing to do has to be seen on video in this day and age, or else it didn't happen. Picture it didn't happen. And I had not heard that story, but I thought I think it's just magnificent. I think it was absolutely fantastic.
And here's the president who signed bipartisan justice reform legislation on national TV, in the setting of the White House, issuing a pardon to a black man during a time of inflamed racial tensions across the country, when the allegation against the president is that he doesn't really care for justice and that he'd just as soon lock them all up.
Donald Trump is the worst Hitler ever. I mean, really, we really have to, if we're going to be the fascist racist that we're accused of being, we're really going to have to do better than this, honestly. He's the worst dictator ever. But I'll tell you what you said in the intro that I thought struck me as something I hadn't really thought about before. You talked about the norm and destruction of the norm. The new normal, the Obama normal and the progressive normal, we all know what that is. Hate America. We did a show yesterday talking about one of Trump's goals for his campaign was to teach American exceptionalism. In our backstage show, available to members only, you said that somebody replied to that by saying, yuck. But here's something I never really thought about before. Donald Trump is the most idiosyncratic, and I'll just come out and say this in reference to what I'm about to say. He's the most unnormal person I think I've ever seen. I think he's, without question, the most unnormal politician I've ever seen. And yet, Donald Trump is the only person in politics who's standing up for normal people. And it's normal people who've been taking the beating. And when I say taking the beating, I don't mean that I have any problem whatsoever with different voices and this is all part of the republic growing and coming into a more perfect union. And I have no problem with other people's voices. It's essential. It's their rights. And I defend the rights of Americans everywhere, the freedom of Americans and their happiness. But without question, we have been living in a society that for 15 or 20 years now, ever since the progressives understood what Saul Alinsky and the Frankfurt School were saying about making the vanguard of the revolution the dispossessed, not the working class people, they're doing too well. Making the vanguard of the communist revolution the dispossessed, using people's decency and their pity and their sympathy against them. We have found ourselves in a world where 19-year-old, pink-haired college student with a ring in her nose dictates policy for entire corporations or for entire cities. A bunch of people who are a handful of people, are burning down cities. They're stopping traffic. They've basically taken over in Seattle and Portland and so on. And what Donald Trump represents is he represents the voice of normalcy. And there's a derogatory term for it, and kind of in the gaming community, it's just a bunch of normies, those normies, normal people. It's the normies that keep the power on. It's the normies that, pick up the garbage, and it's the normies that design bridges and all the rest of this stuff that is important. And they have been absolutely trammeled. And it is an odd irony, I think, that this most unnormal man has such an instinct for normal people and the needs of normal people. I find that really astonishing. I really do. He's the most out of touch. You would think, rather, that he's portrayed as so out of touch. What I meant to say is he is the most in touch billionaire I can conceive of.
So the second element that the left would just brand stagecraft that was designed to send a message that's counter to the truth was that President Trump actually held a naturalization ceremony in the White House with five immigrants of various skin hues, and they were sworn in as American citizens. And again, one of the raps on President Trump is his record with immigration and, separating families and keeping everybody from those S-hole countries out of here. And here it is, President Trump with standing next to these people who raised their hand and took the oath of American citizenship. And he says this to them: with the rights and freedoms that you each enjoy, there's no dream beyond your wildest reach, because Americans can do anything.
Did we get Scott Ott choked up with something that Donald Trump said? What? Look, you can get very cynical about politics, and I usually am. I thought when Barack Obama explained why he'd been in Reverend Wright's church for 1,000 Sundays and never heard the single piece of bigotry at all. He did it in front of an American flag factory, is what it looked like. He had 40 flags behind him. That kind of thing is cynical, but it's done by everybody all the time. This kind of thing is why he's president. He understands the power of the picture. He could have done this in the White House and put out a press release, and people would just say he's bragging and no big deal or whatever. But the reason this one is so deadly to the left is because it does two things. First of all, it shows that there are people of many colors in the Republican Party. I remember reading commentary, I think on the first night, where somebody said, well, the crowd at the convention is very diverse and does not represent the Republican Party at large. Says who? Says who? But more importantly, what Donald Trump has done there is he has shown people, he hasn't told them. This is coming where my screenwriter background comes in, always the mantra of entertainment, especially in the age of mass media, movies and television. It is the first thing you learn as a writer. It is hammered into your head with a spike. And that is show people, don't tell them. Show them, don't tell them. And what he did was he showed people not only that he's perfectly willing to allow at least 5 new people into the country, different people who may have different skin colors. But what he really did was he showed that this is the difference between somebody who walks across Mexico and demands entry into the southern border and sneaks in if they have to, versus people who want to be here, wanted to be here their whole lives, went to enormous amounts of money, time, and expense in order to become legal American citizens. And what Donald Trump did was he showed the world, and especially the progressives, that the Republican Party is not anti-immigrant, they are anti-illegal immigrant. It is a profound distinction, which we are constantly told hasn't got the slightest difference whatsoever. And again, it's genius. It's just genius, not just political genius, because showmanship and stagecraft, rather, these are skills that any cynical person can employ. But I have to tell you, I feel very strongly that a man is as idiosyncratic as Donald Trump is and as used to getting his way as Donald Trump is. I don't get the impression that this was something that some junior scriptwriter forced on him. This would look good if you did this, Mr. President. I don't get that sense at all. I think he genuinely, actually, in his heart, believes both of those things. And he is the first Republican I have seen ever who is in front of this issue instead of constantly apologizing for something that he's not.
So the final question, and just opportunity for you to react to the second day of the Republican National Convention events, also comes from an immigrant who told her story of a childhood in Slovenia and a dream of America, and then coming to this country and being sworn in as a citizen after working hard to pass the test for that.
Yep.
This Slovenian immigrant called for racial unity in this country and expressed compassion for the victims of COVID-19, and then also mentioned the 100th anniversary of the women's right to vote, of the suffrage movement, the success of the suffrage movement, and said she couldn't wait to go to the polling place in November to vote for her husband, Donald Trump. What do you think?
You had me there, man.
What do you
really
think
did. Well
of
played.
Melania Trump's remarks before a gathering in the Rose Garden?
It does strike me as preposterous to say that Orange Man hates immigrants and then married one. I've been accused of being anti-immigrant, and I married an immigrant. The thing that we have in common, Donald Trump and I, aside from having astonishingly beautiful immigrant wives who are far better people than we are, is that I can't speak for Melania, although I'm sure I am. I can certainly speak for my wife, Natasha. They're both Americans that were born overseas. And that's something that you can't explain to somebody. They either understand it or they don't. We do a Stratosphere Lounge show here. I've been doing it for several years now, since 2014, I think. And I basically just yap for about 3 or 4 hours. Mostly it's used in hospitals to help people who are having trouble sleeping. But there was a gentleman from Lithuania who became a fan of the show, and that idea that he was an American born overseas resonated with him. And he eventually moved to America just this last year. And he got married to another person here in America. Now he's a proud American citizen. He was born somewhere else, but he's an American. And likewise, there are many people who are born here in America who haven't got the faintest idea what America's all about. And this essence of what the country is exactly precisely the note that the Republicans should be striking. The note of the Republican Party so far in the convention is exactly perfect. I can't believe that came out of my mouth, but it's perfect. The Democrats have set up America, have told the American people that America is a racist hellhole that is destined for eternal race and class war. It's a country where the cities have to be burned down in order to achieve justice. They used the Something's Happening Here song, which you pointed out, and I've never heard anybody else say it before, Scott. You were so spot on when we were talking about that on Right Angle, that bizarre video they closed the first night of the DNC with. You said on the Right Angle show, you said, you find it so odd that the Democrats are always referring to like 68 as like this was the golden age. This was the time they're trying to recreate. All these aged white millionaire liberal hippies are just constantly, something happening here is a song about unrest in the streets, and it's a song about, the country falling apart. And it's an anthem for the Democrats. And you said, why is it that the Democrats look at this awful divisive year as the high point of American civilization? But they do. And so now when this convention is over, we will have a very clear difference on the table. We'll have a party that says that America is a land of cooperation and brotherhood. And if we follow the rules and work hard, we will build a better country and we'll all be happy. And with the pardon thing, what he also said was, essentially what he said is, yes, we make mistakes in this country. Yes, there is injustice in America. And yes, there is some still racism in America, because unfortunately, despite our best efforts, Americans are still made out of flesh and blood, and they have the same defects as every other person does. But the difference is that in this country, we look these things in the eye, we don't sweep them under the carpet, and we change. And we change. And changing is not easy. It is not an easy thing to do, but we do it. And it's when I say it's perfection, I just want to close this by saying, when I say it's perfection, yes, it is political showmanship perfection, but I am well past it on this one. Those two examples are perfection in terms of capturing a vision of America that some people have versus the burning cities with the fists in the air vision that other people have. And in November, the choice is going to be very clear, and then we're going to learn what kind of a country we really have.
People from around the world and across the United States have become members at BillWhittle.com, and they're the ones who made this program possible, along with some 40 other shows every month similar to it. Daily analysis of the breaking news in the context of time-tested principles. If you're the kind of person who enjoys conversations like this and thinks that maybe America and the world need more of them, you can be part of funding that effort and spreading the news, so to speak, by going to BillWhittle.com and clicking that big green Become a Member button. For Bill Whittle, I'm Scott Ott. Thanks for watching.